Well, as I mentioned, we got Brian Deese here being questioned on a poll that makes Joe Biden really look terrible, but he spins it and manipulates it. Let's see if you catch it, and then we'll correct him. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Thanks, Brian. Another polling question. You touched on it a little bit with some of my colleagues' questions. You mentioned how the president said Friday that the state of the economy is strong. We had a poll out over the weekend, ABC News, that found that 41% of Americans say they're worse off financially now than before this president took office. How do you explain the disconnect there of why this administration's message about the strong economy is not getting through?
Right. So I think the poll that you just cited is actually consistent. So about 2/3 of Americans say that their circumstances are better than before. Say it either way.
Well, you can't say it either way, Brian, because you're completely wrong and you're spinning it and lying to the American public. What the true data is, again, 41% say they're worse off. 16% say they're better off. If you just heard him, again, he's the director here of all the stuff here in terms of the National Economic Council. 16% are better off. He just basically said 66% are better off, and that it was consistent with everything. Furthermore, it was only 42% that felt the same in terms of nothing really changed for them when Joe Biden took office. So that's what the White House does. They manipulate, they spin things, and they lie to the American public. And you got to love that the question was basically, hey, you guys aren't dealing with reality. Can you kind of explain how you're not dealing with reality and how these polls make sense to you when it doesn't make sense to anybody else? And then they deal with non-reality answers to a question that was asking about reality. You got to love it. You got to, it's so head spinning and mind blowing, but somehow this administration, it all makes sense to them. So either they know they're lying or they don't know they're lying and they're just a bunch of idiots. I mean, it's one or the other. What do you guys think in the comments? Let me know.
I think that that it is the case that if you look at the kind of key measures of basic economic security, do I have health insurance? Do I have $400 in the bank in case my car breaks down or I have another emergency expense? Am I late or delinquent on a credit card bill? Am I facing foreclosure? If you look at all of those measures, they on average, American households are in a better position than they were before the pandemic hit, and that's true for the lower income quartiles as well. And so,
is it just me, or does it seem like he's really struggling here to pull out facts that cater to his specific narrative? I mean, you're talking about low income, there's middle income, there's high. I mean, there's so many ranges in terms of the polls that you're looking at that could quantify certain quartiles that he's talking about here. So it's totally just kind of cherry picking certain data points that are going to make it seem like things are going well. In reality, you kind of look at it going, well, before the pandemic, things were really good and people are really struggling. Eggs are up. I mean, people are struggling just to pay for gas and food. And you have your foreign policy. I understand that's not necessarily economic here in the United States. There is some connection, obviously, with the global aspect of that. But it just really seems like he is reaching really far here and struggling just to tell the truth.
So I think that that is in part reflected in the data that you're saying, is that more Americans believe they're in a better economic position in terms of their.
Again, 16%, folks, 16. That's not a lot. That is, especially if you deal with margin of error, it could actually be lower than that.
Their own balance sheet, their own family balance sheet. And at the same time, in the way that we were talking about before, this has been a very challenging period with the pandemic and all of the ways in which the second and third order ways in which that's affect our lives and the way that we operate in the economy, with the war in Ukraine and the cascading impacts on supply chains and on the ways it affects things that, the basic price of things that people pay in the grocery store. And so
isn't that what I just said? Doesn't that kind of contradict his whole argument there? That things are better? And then somehow he has this cockamamie thing in his mind that 66% of Americans think they're better. They're better off. When again, the data doesn't show that whatsoever. But he just said the data does support the fact that she just basically reiterated in her poll. I know she didn't say the 16%, but that's what the poll says. And that's what he confirmed was true, even though in his mind 66% is the thing that's true, even though it's 16%. I know we might be losing our train of thought here, but either way, it is just knucklehead stuff coming from this guy, and I'm confused. Is anybody else confused here? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know in the comment section.
For all those reasons, it's understandable that even as personal household circumstances for the majority of people have improved, the anxiety, the economic anxiety is real. So I just go back to the answer I gave before, which is why the president will both speak directly to the fact that we have more work to do, but also underscore how the progress we have made to date can paint a picture to move forward, and why we should then commit to the proposition of seeing these policies and this policy vision through.
That is what BS looks like, you guys. I know you're familiar with it because we see Karine Jean-Pierre up there all the time, or Joe Biden. So somebody out there's lying. It's either Karine Jean-Pierre, Joe Biden, or the other president, Kamala Harris. Yes, we call her president because, frankly, that's what Joe Biden calls her. So that's what she is. She's president. Somehow people voted for her and elected her as president, even though she was vice president on the ticket. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.